Dr. Sarah Chen had always been good with animals. Back on Earth, she could calm the most aggressive rescue dogs with a gentle voice and the right treat. She thought feeding alien predators would be similar. She was wrong. The transport ship Times Meridian's edge times shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near Research Station Kithara 9. Sarah pressed her face to the small porthole, watching the massive structure grow larger against the star-filled void. The station looked like a metal flower with 6 arms stretching out from a central hub. Each arm housed different research projects, but Sarah only cared about Section C, the xenobiology wing where her new job waited. "First time this far out?" asked Commander Hayes, the ship's captain. He was a gruff man with gray hair and kind eyes. "First time anywhere this far out," Sarah replied, clutching her datapad. "I've studied the files, but seeing pictures isn't the same as being here." Hayes nodded. "You're replacing Dr. Morrison, right? Poor bastard lasted 3 weeks before requesting transfer. What makes you think you'll do better?" Sarah looked at her reflection in the porthole glass. She was 32, average height, with short black hair and steady brown eyes. Nothing special to look at, but she'd spent 15 years working with Earth's most dangerous predators. Lions, tigers, bears, she'd fed them all. How different could aliens be? "I understand predators," she said. Morrison was a biochemist. He saw them as test subjects. "I see them as living beings with needs and instincts." The docking procedure took 2 hours. Sarah used the time to review her files again. The creatures in Section C were called Kythek, wolf-like aliens from a high-gravity world called Thex High. The Galactic Research Council had captured 6 adult Kythek during a first contact mission gone wrong. The aliens had attacked the diplomatic team, killing 12 humans before being subdued. Now the Kythek sat in specialized containment cells, while scientists tried to understand their psychology and biology. The hope was to prevent future conflicts and maybe establish proper communication. Sarah's job was simple: keep them fed and healthy while the real scientists did their work. The station's artificial gravity kicked in as Sarah walked through the airlocks. The corridors were clean, white metal with blue lighting strips along the floor. Everything smelled like recycled air and disinfectant. She followed the signs to Section C, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Dr. Chen. A thin man with nervous energy practically bounced toward her. "I'm Dr. Patel, the station's head of xenobiology. Welcome to Kithara 9. Dr. Patel looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His hair stuck up at odd angles, and his lab coat had coffee stains. But his handshake was firm, and his smile seemed genuine. "Thank you, Dr. Patel. I'm ready to get started. Please, call me Raj. And I have to warn you, the Kythek have been difficult. Morrison tried everything by the book, but they barely ate. They're losing weight and becoming more aggressive. We're worried they might die in captivity." They walked through several security checkpoints before reaching the containment area. The moment Sarah stepped through the final door, she knew she was in the presence of apex predators. The smell hit her first, a musky scent, like wet fur, mixed with something sharp and metallic. Then came the sounds: low growls, clicking noises, and the scrape of claws on metal. The containment cells were large, transparent cubes arranged in a circle around a central monitoring station. Each cube was 10 meters on each side, with environmental controls to match the Kythek homeworld, and in each cube was a nightmare made flesh. The Kythek stood nearly 3 meters tall on powerful digitigrade legs. Their bodies were covered in dark fur marked with silver patterns unique to each individual. They had elongated skulls filled with sharp teeth, and their hands ended in retractable claws that could punch through steel. Their eyes were the worst part, intelligent golden orbs that tracked every movement with predatory focus. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Raj said. But Sarah heard the fear in his voice. "And terrifying. They're incredibly intelligent. Our translators can handle basic communication, but they refuse to cooperate." Sarah approached the nearest cell. The Kythek inside, a female based on the file photos, watched her with unblinking eyes. When Sarah got within 2 meters of the transparent wall, The alien rose from her resting position and padded closer. They stared at each other through the barrier. "What are you feeding them?" Sarah asked. "Standard protein blocks, supplemented with synthetic meat cultures. Everything calculated for their nutritional needs." Sarah frowned. When was the last time they had a proper meal? Real food? Work? Real food? Dr. Chen, these are alien predators. We can't just throw them raw meat. Why not? Sarah turned to face him. They're hunters, Raj. Their entire biology is built around the chase and the kill. You're giving them astronaut food and wondering why they're depressed. The Kythek female tilted her head, as if listening to their conversation. Sarah noticed the alien's ribs were showing through her fur. All 6 Kythek looked underfed, despite the careful calorie calculations. But the regulations are killing them. Sarah pulled out her datapad and started taking notes. I need to see their medical files, behavioral observations, and a complete breakdown of their feeding schedule. Over the next 3 hours, Sarah reviewed everything. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. The Kythek were suffering from what looked like clinical depression. They barely moved unless approached directly. They showed no interest in the enrichment toys provided. Most concerning, they were losing muscle mass despite adequate protein intake. They're dying of spiritual starvation, Sarah announced at the evening briefing. The room held Raj and 3 other researchers. Dr. Williams, psychology, Dr. Santos, nutrition, and Dr. Kim, security. Spiritual starvation? Dr. Williams raised an eyebrow. That's not a medical term. Those not a medical term. It's my term. Look at the data. They're physically healthy but psychologically broken. You've removed everything that makes them what they are. They're hunters trapped in boxes. Fed like livestock. Dr. Kim shook her head. These creatures killed 12 humans. We can't just let them hunt. I'm not suggesting we let them loose in the station corridors, but we need to give them something that connects to their nature. Sarah pulled up her notes on the main screen. According to their psychological profiles, Kythek society revolves around pack hunting. They're led by a hunt matron, an alpha female who guides the pack's hunting strategy. Take away the hunt, and you break the social structure that keeps them stable. So what do you propose? Raj asked. Let me try a different approach. Give me 1 week. The next morning, Sarah arrived early at the containment area. She'd spent half the night researching Earth predators and their feeding behaviors. The Kythek were already awake, watching her through their transparent walls. Sarah had requisitioned a cart full of supplies from the station's biolab. Raw protein cultures. Yes, but also things the previous team hadn't considered. Bones with marrow. Organs with different textures and tastes. And most importantly, whole carcasses of lab-grown animals that the Kythek would have to work to eat. She started with the female who'd watched her the day before. According to the files, her name was something that translated roughly as, "Stone that cuts." Sarah decided to call her Stone. "Good morning, Stone," Sarah said as she approached the cell. The translator box rendered her words into a series of growls and clicks. Stone's ears perked up, the first sign of interest Sarah had seen. Sarah activated the cell's feeding port and slid in her first offering. The haunch of a lab-grown deer analog, complete with hide and bone. It was messy, challenging, and required effort to consume. Stone approached cautiously. She sniffed the offering, then looked at Sarah with what might have been surprise. Without breaking eye contact, Stone grabbed the haunch and began to tear into it with obvious relish. For the first time since arriving at the station, a Kythek was eating with enthusiasm. The other 5 Kythek took notice immediately. They pressed against their cell walls, watching Stone eat, and making low vocalizations that Sarah recognized as excitement. She moved to the next cell, which housed a large male called Wind in Darkness. "Your turn, Wind," Sarah said, sliding another carcass through his feeding port. The response was immediate. Wind attacked his meal with savage efficiency. But Sarah noticed something else. He kept glancing at Stone's cell, as if seeking approval. The same behavior occurred with each subsequent feeding. All 6 Kythek looked to Stone during their meals. Stone was the pack's hunt matron. As Sarah finished the feeding round, she noticed the aliens' posture had changed. They stood straighter, moved with more purpose. Most importantly, they were paying attention to their environment again, instead of lying listlessly in their cells. "Impressive work," came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to find Dr. Williams taking notes. "It's just the beginning," Sarah replied. "They need more than food. They need structure." "What do you mean?" Sarah gestured at the cells. "Look at how they defer to Stone. She's their leader. But we've stripped away her authority by treating them all equally. In their society, she would decide who eats when, who gets the best portions, how the hunt is conducted." Dr. Williams frowned. "You want to recreate their social hierarchy? I want to give them back their dignity. Stone isn't just another test subject. She's a leader of warriors. Treat her like one, and the others will respond." That afternoon, Sarah made a radical decision. Instead of feeding all 6 Kythek simultaneously, she fed Stone first and alone. She offered the hunt matron the choicest portion, a large carcass with intact organs and marrow-rich bones. Stone's reaction was immediate and profound. She stood taller, her chest swelling with obvious pride. She ate slowly, deliberately, making eye contact with her pack members through their cell walls. The other Kythek waited patiently, showing no aggression or impatience despite their obvious hunger. When Stone finished, she made a series of barks and clicks that the translator rendered as, "The hunt provides, the pack feeds." Only then did Sarah begin feeding the others. And for the first time since their capture, all 6 Kythek ate their full portions without leaving scraps. "My God," Raj whispered as he watched the feeding through the security cameras. "How did you know to do that?" "I watched. I listened. I treated them like people instead of animals." But Sarah's biggest breakthrough came 3 days later. She'd been varying their food sources, providing different challenges and textures to keep them engaged. That morning, she brought something new. A live plant that moved and reacted to touch, like a cross between seaweed and a sensitive plant. Stone examined the strange organism with obvious interest. It wasn't food, but it was something that required investigation. As Stone prodded the plant with one claw, it curled away from her touch. Her golden eyes lit up with what Sarah could only describe as delight. "You like puzzles, don't you?" Sarah said through the translator. Stone looked directly at her. For a long moment, the two predators, human and alien, studied each other. Then Stone made a sound the translator couldn't parse. It was too complex, too nuanced for the basic vocabulary they'd programmed. But Sarah understood anyway. It was the sound of respect. Word of Sarah's success spread quickly through the station. Within a week, researchers from other sections were requesting tours of the containment area to see the Kythek Whisperer in action. The aliens were gaining weight, showing interest in their environment, and for the first time since capture, actively communicating with their handlers. But Sarah knew she was walking a dangerous line. The Kythek weren't pets or lab animals. They were warriors from a proud species. And warriors, even caged ones, were always planning their next move. The question was, what did they want, and how far would they go to get it? Sarah was about to find out. She was just supposed to feed them, now they hail her as the hunt's matron. 2 weeks into her assignment, Sarah Chen had become the most popular human on Research Station Kythera 9. The Kythek were thriving under her care, and more importantly, they were finally communicating. What started as simple feeding protocols had evolved into something unprecedented in human-alien relations. The breakthrough came when Stone, the pack's hunt matron, began teaching Sarah their language. It happened during the morning feeding routine. Sarah had brought Stone a particularly challenging meal. A synthesized creature that required both strength and strategy to consume properly. As Stone worked to access the nutrient-rich organs, she made a series of deliberate sounds that weren't in the translator's database. "What are you trying to tell me?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside the cell wall. Stone paused her feeding and looked directly at Sarah. She repeated the sounds, then gestured with one clawed hand toward her mouth, then toward Sarah. "You're teaching me words?" Sarah felt her heart race with excitement. Stone's golden eyes seemed to sparkle with approval. She spoke again, slowly this time, pointing to different parts of her meal. The translator caught fragments: muscle, blood, strength. But Stone was adding nuances, emotional context, that the machines couldn't capture. Within an hour, Sarah had learned 6 new Kythek words and their emotional inflections. Within a week, she could hold basic conversations without the translator. Stone proved to be a patient teacher, correcting Sarah's pronunciation with gentle growls and praising progress with pleased rumbles. The other researchers were amazed by the development, but Sarah sensed there was more to it than simple language exchange. Stone wasn't just teaching her words, she was evaluating her, testing her worthiness for something greater. The test came 3 weeks into Sarah's assignment. Sarah arrived for the morning feeding to find all 6 Kythek standing at attention in their cells. Stone stood in the center of her enclosure, radiating an authority that made the air itself seem heavier. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of command. "Small hunter who provides," Stone said, using the name they'd given Sarah. "You have learned our sounds, now you must learn our ways." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just conversation. It was an invitation. Or maybe a demand. "What do you want me to learn?" Sarah asked in Kythek, her pronunciation still rough but understandable. Stone gestured to the other pack members with one clawed hand. "Watch, learn, understand what it means to lead the hunt." What followed was the most extraordinary display Sarah had ever witnessed. Stone began a complex ritual that involved every member of the pack. She moved through a series of postures and vocalizations that told a story, not with words, but with her entire body. The other Kythek responded in perfect synchronization, their movements flowing like a deadly dance. Even through the transparent walls of their cells, Sarah could see the invisible bonds that connected them. This wasn't just a pack, it was a unified organism with Stone as its guiding intelligence. "This is how we prepare for the great hunt," Stone explained when the ritual ended. "Each movement has meaning. Each sound carries purpose. The hunt matron must know every part, must feel the pulse of her pack's heart." Sarah watched in fascination as Stone repeated key sequences, clearly expecting her to memorize them. It took 3 hours, but Sarah managed to approximate the basic movements. The Kythek watched her attempts with intense focus, occasionally clicking approval or making corrective sounds. When Sarah completed her first full sequence, all 6 aliens rose to their hind legs and released a harmonious howl that made the station's metal walls vibrate. It was beautiful, terrifying, and deeply moving all at once. "Why are you teaching me this?" Sarah asked when the echoes faded. Stone's gaze was steady and serious. "Because the hunt calls. Small hunter who provides. And when it calls, we must be ready." Dr. Raj Patel was beside himself with excitement when Sarah reported the day's developments. The research team gathered in Conference Room B to discuss the implications of the Kythek willingly sharing their cultural practices. "This is unprecedented, Doctor," Williams said, reviewing Sarah's recordings of the hunting ritual. "They're not just communicating. They're actively trying to educate a human in their traditions. But why Sarah specifically?" Dr. Santos wondered. What makes her different from Dr. Morrison, or any of us? Sarah had been wondering the same thing. As she thought about her interactions with the Kythek, a pattern emerged. "I think it's because I approached them as equals," she said slowly. "Morrison saw them as subjects to be studied. You see them as dangerous predators to be contained. But I see them as people. Just people who happen to be very different from us." Dr. Kim frowned. "People who killed 12 humans during first contact. People who were probably terrified and defending themselves," Sarah countered. "Think about it from their perspective. Strange creatures arrive from the sky, make incomprehensible sounds, and point unknown devices at them. What would any predator species do?" "So you think they were acting in self-defense?" Raj asked. "I think they were acting like any intelligent beings faced with an unknown threat. The tragedy is that both sides were trying to do the right thing, but neither understood the other's intentions." The conversation was interrupted by an alarm from the containment area. All 6 Kythek were agitated, pacing their cells and making distressed sounds. Sarah rushed to the observation deck to find Stone standing rigid at the center of her enclosure, her fur standing on end. "What's wrong with them?" Dr. Kim demanded. Sarah listened to the sounds the Kythek were making. Her language lessons with Stone had taught her to recognize emotional undertones in their vocalizations. What she heard now chilled her blood. "They're afraid," she said. "No, not afraid." Before anyone could respond, the station's communication system crackled to life. Commander Hayes' voice echoed through the halls, tense with urgency. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have unidentified ships approaching at high speed. Repeat, unknown vessels inbound. This is not a drill." The Kythek's warnings intensified. Stone was making rapid clicks and gestures that Sarah was beginning to understand. Her stomach dropped as the meaning became clear. "They're Kythek ships," she announced to the stunned research team. "Stone says her people are coming." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The station's defensive systems powered up, while the research teams scrambled to secure their data. Commander Hayes assembled a crisis team to decide how to respond to the approaching fleet. Sarah found herself in the unique position of being the only human who could potentially communicate with the incoming Kythek. But first, she needed to understand what Stone and her pack knew about the situation. "Stone," Sarah said as she approached the Hunt Matron's cell. "Your people come for you?" Stone's reply was complex, filled with nuances that the translator couldn't capture. But Sarah's growing understanding of Kythek language helped her parse the meaning. "Not come for us," Stone said sadly. "Come for blood debt. Come for revenge." Sarah felt her heart sink. "Revenge for your capture? Revenge for packmates lost? Revenge for dishonor?" The hunt demands balance. The situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The approaching Kythek weren't coming to rescue their captured packmates. They were coming to avenge them. From their perspective, the humans had attacked and kidnapped members of their hunting pack. Honor demanded retribution. "How many ships?" Sarah asked. Stone listened to sounds that human ears couldn't detect, her sensitive hearing picking up vibrations through the station's hull. 3 hunt packs. 18 ships of war. The research station had basic defensive systems and a small security force. Against 18 warships crewed by angry Kythek warriors, they wouldn't last 10 minutes. "Stone," Sarah said urgently, "can you contact them? Can you tell them we didn't mean harm?" Stone's laugh was a harsh barking sound. "Words will not turn aside the hunt's vengeance. Small hunter who provides. Only blood pays for blood." But as Sarah watched the Kythek Hunt Matron pace her cell, she noticed something in the alien's posture. Stone was thinking, calculating, weighing options the way any good leader would in a crisis situation. "There is one possibility," Stone said finally. "But it would require great courage from the small hunter who provides." "What possibility?" Stone fixed Sarah with an intense stare. "The hunt recognizes only strength and honor. If one of honor speaks for your pack, if one of proven worth claims blood debt as settled, the hunt might listen." Sarah felt the pieces clicking together in her mind. "You want me to speak for the humans? As a hunt matron, I want you to be worthy of the title you have earned in our eyes," Stone replied. "You have fed us with honor. You have learned our ways. You have shown respect for the hunt. My pack acknowledges your leadership." The other 5 Kythek had been listening to the conversation. Now they moved to the front of their cells, all facing Sarah. As one, they performed the gesture of respect she'd seen them give to Stone. A complex movement that involved dropping to one knee while keeping their heads high. Ready for action. "We follow the small hunter who provides," Wind in Darkness announced. "We follow our new hunt matron." Sarah stared at the 6 alien predators who had just declared her their leader. Part of her mind screamed that this was insane. She was a food specialist, not a warrior or diplomat. But another part, the part that had always understood predators, recognized the weight of what they were offering her. Respect, authority, the chance to prevent a war. "If I do this," Sarah said slowly, If I accept the title of Hunt Matron and speak for both our species, will your people really listen? Stone's golden eyes burned with fierce pride. The hunt honors strength, small hunter who provides. Show them your strength, and they will listen. Commander Hayes nearly fell out of his chair when Sarah explained the situation. The crisis team stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. You want to negotiate with alien warships? Dr. Kim sputtered. As their, what did you call it? Hunt Matron? It's our only chance, Sarah insisted. They're coming for revenge, and they have the firepower to destroy this station. But if I can convince them that the blood debt has been settled honorably, they might withdraw. And if they don't? Sarah looked around the room at the faces of people she'd come to consider friends. Then we're no worse off than we are now. Commander Hayes rubbed his temples. The approaching fleet will be in weapons range in 4 hours. Our options are limited. He looked at Sarah with tired eyes. What do you need? Access to the station's communication array. And, Sarah took a deep breath, I need the Kythek pack with me when I make the transmission. The approaching fleet needs to see that their packmates acknowledge my authority. Absolutely not, Dr. Kim snapped. We are not releasing 6 dangerous alien predators. They're not dangerous to me, Sarah interrupted. And this is our only shot at preventing a massacre. The debate continued for another hour. But in the end, practical necessity won out. With alien warships approaching and no realistic chance of military victory, diplomatic risk was their only option. As the research team prepared for the most unusual first contact attempt in human history, Sarah returned to the containment area for one final conversation with Stone. Are you ready for this, small hunter who provides? The Kythek Hunt Matron asked. Sarah looked at her reflection in the transparent wall of Stone's cell. She saw a scared human woman pretending to be something she'd never imagined. But she also saw something else. The same steady determination that had helped her calm, aggressive rescue dogs and earn the respect of Earth's most dangerous predators. I'm ready, she said. And for the first time since accepting this impossible responsibility, she actually believed it. Number she was just supposed to feed them, now they hail her as the Hunt's matron. The command center of Research Station Kithara 9 had never seen anything like it. 6 enormous Kythek warriors stood in perfect formation behind a small human woman who was about to attempt the most audacious act of diplomacy in galactic history. Sarah Chen tried to project confidence as she approached the communication console, but her hands were shaking. In 3 hours, 18 Kythek warships would be in firing range. If her plan failed, everyone on the station would be dead within minutes. Transmission ready, Commander Hayes announced. His voice was steady, but Sarah could see the worry in his eyes. You have a clear channel to the approaching fleet. Stone moved to stand directly behind Sarah's left shoulder. The traditional position of a Hunt Matron's primary advisor. The other 5 Kythek arranged themselves in a protective semicircle. To any Kythek viewing the transmission, the message would be clear. This human had earned their loyalty through strength and honor. Remember, Stone whispered in her complex language, show no weakness. The Hunt respects only power and truth. Sarah nodded and activated the communication array. The main screen flickered to life, showing the approaching Kythek fleet. 18 sleek warships, shaped like predatory fish, moved through space with deadly grace. Each vessel was easily twice the size of the research station. Attention Kythek fleet, Sarah began, speaking in their language. I am Sarah Chen, Hunt Matron of the pack you seek. I would speak with your fleet commander. The transmission lag felt like forever. Sarah was acutely aware of every sound in the command center. The hum of life support. The nervous breathing of the human staff. The barely audible rumble of approval from the Kythek behind her. When the response came, it nearly knocked Sarah off her feet. The main screen filled with the image of a massive Kythek male whose presence radiated raw authority. His fur was silver-gray with age, marked by scars that spoke of countless battles. When he spoke, his voice was like distant thunder. I am War Leader Thex Moore, speaker for the United Hunt Packs. You claim the title of Hunt Matron, yet you are not Kythek. Explain this presumption before I cleanse this dishonor with fire. Sarah felt the weight of every eye in the command center focused on her. This was the moment of truth. She could hear Stone's breathing behind her, steady and supportive, and drew strength from it. I claim the title because it was given to me by those I serve, Sarah replied, her pronunciation growing stronger with each word. Stone that cuts in her pack have acknowledged my leadership. I have fed them with honor, learned their ways, and earned their respect through deed, not birthright. War leader Thexmore's eyes narrowed. You speak our language well for a hairless creature. But words are wind. Where is the proof of your worthiness? This was the moment Stone had prepared her for. Sarah stepped aside, allowing the approaching fleet to see the 6 captured Kythek clearly. Then she began the hunting ritual Stone had taught her, moving through the complex series of gestures and vocalizations that told the story of a successful hunt. But Sarah adapted the ritual, making it tell a new story, the story of how a human had hunted not for prey, but for understanding. How she had tracked the needs of a captive pack, stalked solutions to their suffering, and claimed victory not through violence, but through compassion. As she moved, the 6 Kythek behind her joined the ritual. Their voices blended with hers in perfect harmony, creating a symphony of respect that resonated through the station's corridors. Even the human staff, who couldn't understand the words, felt the power of the moment. When the ritual ended, War leader Thexmore was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Impressive. But ritual alone does not make a hunt matron. Stone that cuts, daughter of my blood sister, speak truth. Does this human truly lead your pack? Stone stepped forward, her golden eyes burning with fierce pride. War leader, this small hunter who provides has done what no other could. She saw us not as beasts to be contained, but as warriors deserving respect. Under her guidance, we have regained our strength and dignity. She has earned the right to speak for both our peoples. And you, Wind and Darkness, Gray Shadow Runner, Night Stalker who waits, do you all acknowledge this human's authority? Each of the captured Kythek stepped forward in turn, declaring their loyalty to Sarah in formal language that carried the weight of sacred oaths. By the end, even war leader Thexmore looked impressed. This is unprecedented, the fleet commander admitted. Never has a non-Kythek been granted such honor. But I sense no deception in my packkin's words. His gaze fixed on Sarah with laser intensity. Very well, Hunt Matron Sarah Chen. You have the respect of those you lead. Now convince me why the blood debt for their capture should not be paid in human lives. This was the crucial moment. Sarah had rehearsed this speech a dozen times, but facing the reality of an ancient warrior demanding justice for his people made her previous preparation seem inadequate. She drew on everything she'd learned about Kythek culture, about honor and respect, and the bonds that held packs together. War leader Thexmore. I do not deny that blood was spilled during first contact. But it was spilled in confusion, not malice. Your people defended themselves against what they perceived as a threat. My people attempted communication but failed to recognize the signs of Kythek territorial behavior. Both sides acted honorably according to their understanding. Sarah paused, letting her words sink in. The true dishonor would be in perpetuating a cycle of revenge based on misunderstanding. Stone and her pack have taught me that the greatest strength of the hunt is not in destroying enemies, but in recognizing when former enemies can become allies. War leader Thexmore's scarred face showed no emotion, but Sarah caught a slight tilt of his head that Stone had taught her to recognize as interested attention. You speak of alliance between predator species, the war leader said. What proof do you offer that humans can be trusted as hunting partners rather than prey? Sarah had been hoping for this question. She gestured to the research team behind her. These humans have spent months studying your people not to find weaknesses, but to understand strengths. They seek to learn from Kythek hunting techniques, pack dynamics, and social structures. They offer their own knowledge in return. Technologies that could enhance your hunts, medicines that could strengthen your warriors, and insights into the galaxy beyond your homeworld. And what of the captured pack? What becomes of Stone That Cuts and her warriors? This was the most delicate part of the negotiation. Sarah looked back at Stone, seeing the slight nod of encouragement in the Kythek's golden eyes. They choose their own path, Sarah said firmly. As free beings, they may return to Thek's High with honor intact, or they may choose to remain here as ambassadors, helping to build understanding between our peoples. The choice is theirs alone. Stone stepped forward. War leader, I would speak. Texmore nodded permission. My pack and I have seen the truth of human nature, Stone declared. They are not the weak scavengers we first believed. They are hunters of knowledge, stalkers of understanding. Under the guidance of Hunt Matron Sarah Chen, they have shown us respect and dignity. I recommend alliance. The other 5 Kythek voiced their agreement in unison, creating a harmony of approval that even the humans could recognize as significant. War leader Texmore was quiet for so long that Sarah began to worry the transmission had failed. Finally, the ancient warrior spoke. Hunt Matron Sarah Chen. You have achieved something remarkable. You have taken a pack broken by captivity and made them whole again. You have learned our ways without abandoning your own. Most importantly, you have shown that strength comes in many forms. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she waited for the fleet commander's decision. I withdraw the blood debt, Texmore announced. The Hunt recognizes your authority and accepts your proposal for alliance. But know this. You have taken on a great responsibility. As Hunt Matron acknowledged by the United Packs, you speak for both species now. Honor that role, or face the consequences. The relief in the command center was palpable. Commander Hayes actually slumped against his console, while Dr. Patel wiped away tears he didn't seem to realize he was shedding. But Sarah barely noticed the human reactions. Her attention was focused on the 6 Kythek, who had made this moment possible. Stone approached her with slow, ceremonial steps. The title is yours by right now, Hunt Matron, Stone said, using the formal address for the first time. Will you accept the responsibility that comes with it? Sarah looked around the room at the humans who had trusted her with their lives and the aliens who had accepted her as their leader. She thought about her simple plan to just feed some captive predators and keep them healthy. How had it led to this moment where she was being offered a role that could reshape the relationship between 2 entire species? I accept, she said simply. The response was immediate and overwhelming. All 6 Kythek raised their voices in a howl of triumph that resonated through the station's hull. Even war leader Texmore and his fleet joined the celebration, their voices carried across space by the communication array. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. The Kythek fleet took up defensive positions around the research station. Not as conquerors, but as protectors of their new ally. Cultural exchange teams began organizing visits between the ships and the station. Most importantly, the foundation was laid for the first formal alliance between humanity and an alien species. Sarah found herself in the unprecedented position of being both a human researcher and a recognized leader in alien society. The Kythek fleet included several other Hunt Matrons, and she was formally inducted into their council with all the ceremony such an honor deserved. But the moment that meant the most to her came 3 days after the fleet's arrival. She was in what had once been the containment area, now converted into cultural exchange rooms where humans and Kythek could meet safely. Stone approached her with the slow, measured gait of a formal occasion. Hunt Matron Sarah Chen, Stone said. My pack and I have made our decision regarding your offer. Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. She'd grown so attached to these 6 Kythek that the thought of losing them hurt more than she'd expected. We choose to remain, Stone announced. Not as prisoners or test subjects, but as ambassadors. We will help build the bridge between our peoples, under your continued guidance. Sarah felt tears start to flow down her cheeks. You're staying? We follow where our Hunt Matron leads. Wind in Darkness said with the rumbling sound that passed for Kythek laughter. And you, small hunter, who provides, have led us well. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the newly renamed diplomatic station Kithara 9, watching as the 3rd joint human Kythek exploration vessel departed for the frontier worlds. The alliance she'd helped create had grown beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Human agricultural techniques had revolutionized food production on Thek's High, ending generations of famine. Kythek hunting strategies had made human exploration teams exponentially more effective. Most importantly, the two species had learned to see each other not as alien threats, but as different kinds of people with their own strengths and wisdom. Stone joined her at the observation window, moving with the fluid grace that Sarah had come to associate with contentment. "Do you ever regret it?" Stone asked. "The path that brought you here?" Sarah smiled, thinking back to that day when she'd just been a food specialist, trying to keep some captive aliens healthy. "I was just supposed to feed you," she said. "How did it lead to all this?" "Because you saw us truly," Stone replied. "You understood that feeding the body means nothing if you starve the spirit. You gave us back our dignity, our purpose, our place in the great hunt." Sarah nodded, watching the exploration ship disappear into hyperspace. Somewhere out there, mixed crews of humans and Kythek were discovering new worlds together, hunting knowledge and understanding instead of each other. "Hunt Matron Sarah Chen," Stone said formally. "The pack requests your presence for evening meal." Sarah laughed. "After all these months, some things never changed." "Coming, Stone. What are we having tonight? Something special." Wind brought back samples from the Antares colony. "He says they will challenge your pack's hunting skills properly." As they walked toward the dining hall where 4 species now gathered to share meals and stories, Sarah reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. She'd come to feed aliens, and had ended up helping to reshape the galaxy. Not bad for a food specialist from Earth. Behind them, the stars wheeled on in their ancient dance. But now, they looked down on a universe where former enemies had become family. Where the great hunt had evolved from a search for prey into a quest for understanding, and where a human woman carried the title of Hunt Matron with pride. The pack was fed, the hunt continued, and the galaxy was a little less lonely than it had been before.